What's the right timing for using portfolio level agility? Hi there, I'm Yuval. Welcome to Scaling with Agility, where I talk about nuanced ways to bring agility to your organization at scale. This is a question that I often get asked. What's the right timing to introduce portfolio to your ways of working, a portfolio perspective? And the answer is kind of similar to the when to plan. When's the best time to plant a tree? The best time to start talking about portfolio, in my view, was, when you started your agile journey. If you already had, then the best timing, no. Most organizations wait way too long to adopt portfolio level practices. They've been told you can't scale what's broken. So they wait until they nail it at the team and product group level. But what I've often seen in my work with organizations is that fixing what's broken requires focusing on the upstream that's shaping the work and the context for these teams. Whether you call that portfolio or just a higher altitude or flight level, I don't really care about that. But looking upstream and intervening at that level is a pretty powerful pattern that I've seen work pretty often. Let me give you an example. Back in 2012 or so, I met a senior VP responsible for a 1,000-person delivery organization. It was working in a traditional waterfall. It was a critical chain optimized waterfall theory of constraints, case study for how to optimize all of the dependencies in projects. Over the years, by the way, I met several organizations that all claim to be world class at managing projects, and still something was missing. And in this case, what they were facing was a lot of component teams. So a lot of heavy coordination and integration costs across multiple products. A build that takes 2 weeks to integrate. And whenever they get to the end of a release, a lot of risk, timing, scheduling risk around will that really work? How long would it take us to stabilize this? Because of those risks, they were working very hard to try and control change. They recognized that in order to successfully release, they need to control change. They cannot really accept feature requests from their customers during this cycle. And this was a successful and profitable shop, but Ricky, who was the leader for that team, was looking for ways to make it better. She didn't really like the fact that she was saying no, that the team was saying no to customers. We cannot do your things right now. We'll do it in the next cycle. What they realized was that in order to welcome change for their customers, they often had to accept change out of cycle. They started to do that because they were focused on profitability, and this created a constant fire. So that was the beginning of the conversation, and we started to discuss options. The option that the team liked the most was starting with visualizing, understanding, and managing flow across this delivery organization. You might call it the portfolio of deliveries this organization was driving. Again, it was 1,000 people strong delivery organization with a lot of component teams, several development groups focused on different aspects of the solution. This visualization board, we got it going within weeks. This team was very experienced, highly motivated, operationally focused. So it didn't take long to start to see work flowing or not flowing. And once the team started to see what's going on this Kanban board, they started making changes. They started thinking about how could we integrate more often? How could we have conversations about pulling work in more often? They started to see the effect of the waterfall, and they started to break through it at their level. We've seen how much cross-product work this portfolio delivered, and we started exploring ways to reorganize around value. We started introducing more and more agility principles and practices, like continuous integration, like breaking the work to smaller pieces and feeding it into the cycle rather than waiting for we reduced batch sizes. Eventually, they did reorganize to streamline cross-product groups, focus on the real product from the eyes of the customers, and leverage team-level agile working, but that took time. The thing that I've noticed in this case and in other situations where we've used that approach is that starting at this altitude, what you might call the portfolio level, gives you as a leader tons of leverage to make an impact on the agility and product orientation of your organization. By tackling the systemic constraints to product thinking, flow, empiricism, and allowing you as a leader to learn and model the behaviors you expect from your people. If you're interested to learn a bit more about how to go through this cycle to use this portfolio agility intervention, I wrote this portfolio agility trail map, which is a free email course based on the lightweight Kanban first approach I described above, combined with modern concepts such as the product operating model and evidence-based method. And this is kind of the playbook that I use with enterprise level organizations that I'm helping today. And in some cases also for smaller businesses where we use this approach for bringing agility to the whole organization. Delivery projects or features or product initiatives, it's actually all of our company bets that could be related to our products. They could be related to internal capabilities. And before we go and implement agile in the trenches, let's start with organizing and thinking about the flow and the outcome orientation and steering with evidence for our biggest initiatives. What I like about this as a management consultant is that this provides the surface area to have exactly the sort of conversations that are moving the needle for how leaders think about their operating system. And once we have these conversations, once you start to see the VP starting to ask their people about stop starting, start finishing, or the COO asking people to describe outcomes when they talk about initiatives rather than what's the actual work. When that starts happening, it's like a tree tab for the organization. When these leaders become the heroes of the agility journey in the organization, everything else becomes much easier. A lot of the time, the constraint for organizations is the system around the teams. So instead of waiting to work on the system around the teams until the teams are working great, why not tackle this system on? Thank you for listening to this episode of Scaling with Agility.